her Adam's apple drappling a spittle of venom, and a silage brown piss trickling from below her wounded gooch. Oh, what a sentence.
Poetry.
Poetry. Hello everyone and welcome to the Council of Elrond. I'm Dave and I'm joined by my co-host Johnny. And welcome to today's episode. We're going to be discussing our thoughts on the behind the scenes of the Rings of Power TV show. So we just got our chance to watch it there recently during the week. And yeah, we're going to discuss that. But at the end of this episode, we're going to have a fun little thing where we're going to play Lord of the Rings Mad Libs. So if you don't know what that is, you're going to want to stick around because it's kind of funny. Or it's quite funny. And
very good.
We're also going to do a take where I'll read out the story to Johnny, and Johnny's going to drink a glass of water and try and hold in the water and
Try not to laugh.
And he's probably going to laugh and spit it all over everything. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave us a review. Special thank you to Jack Knightley. You know who you are. And let us begin, I suppose.
Yeah. Check us out on YouTube.
Yeah, check us out on YouTube. Actually, you're going to want to see this. If you're listening to this, you're going to want to see it on YouTube because the Mad Libs will be quite visual and funny. So yeah.
So do that.
So you do that and enjoy yourselves, guys, and get ready for this episode. So
Let's get into it.
We're not going to do episode by episode of the Rings of Power behind the scenes TV show thing. We're just going to talk our general opinions.
If anybody hasn't seen it, it's just
go watch it.
They're like 5-minute episodes there's 8 of them. There's one per episode, and it's about 5 minutes each one. So
5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not. Yeah, you can watch the whole thing in 40-45 minutes. So
So let us begin. What did you think? By the way, I'm about to sneeze.
That's okay.
Are you sure?
You can sneeze.
Do you forgive me?
Just don't sneeze upon me. Get away.
Oh,
Oh, Jesus.
sorry.
Bless you, laddie.
I had to get it all out in one. I didn't want to do, a couple of sneezes. Right. So what do you think? Did you enjoy it?
I did, yeah. I enjoyed it a lot. I knew I was going to enjoy it, though, because I always enjoy watching behind-the-scenes things of, most stuff. I always find the behind-the-scenes sometimes even more interesting than the actual shows or films or series or whatever.
Yeah.
And again, if it's anything Lord of the Rings, Tolkien, Middle-earth, I knew I was going to love it because, I mean, you know as well, like the behind the scenes for
the appendices of the Lord of the Rings.
Like we've worn those DVDs out, like
I know.
we used to always watch them non-stop, and
but that is the absolute bar that was set years ago when they did those appendices, and I always just kind of thought myself that I love these and these are the best ever. But I've heard lots of other people that aren't fans of Lord of the Rings, just movie fans, talking about the appendices and saying these are probably the best ones that have ever been made for a film. And so that is incredible. That I know that other movies might have a 40 minutes behind the scenes bonus thing on the DVD, but there's nothing like this where you get an extra 4 discs,
hours and hours
of behind the scenes. But
again, I would have enjoyed hours of material like this, but then when they were just broken down to shorter, like 5-minute chunks as well, I was like, oh, that's quite maybe apt for the modern age, where if maybe this new generation who just don't have the attention span to watch that kind of stuff, they might actually watch a 5-minute episode but behind the scenes for the making of a 1 hour or 1 hour and 10-minute episode of The Rings of Power. So it seems like that's the way things are going in the modern times. Things are just getting shorter.
TikTok culture.
But but to get into it, I definitely enjoyed it. I love seeing I love watching sort of techniques on how they're going to do this, and they say, okay, we have this idea for this particular shot. How are we going to do it? We get to see all those types of tricks and like forced perspectives and different things like that, like sort of like the ones that we saw, the classic ones that we saw in the Fellowship of the Ring kind of ones, where if they're trying to get a shot of Gandalf and Frodo in the cart together. How are they going to do that? Or especially the one we know about the table with the smoke. That's the famous one as well.
The one where the camera moves around the table.
The camera moves around the table.
So they had to actually
move
the table.
The table was split into like 2 different parts, and they had to like make that look like it was all on a rig. So anyway, if you haven't watched the behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings, definitely go and check that one out. But this is pretty good too as well.
Yeah.
What was your overall thoughts?
Well, my overall thoughts were, pretty good. Definitely adds to everything. But like, it just seemed like every episode was a trailer of what they could show.
Yeah.
Which was annoying.
Yeah.
And like I remember you and I when we were watching, I don't know, was it episode 4 or 5 of the behind the scenes thing, and it said it mentioned something about the what is it called? The scale team, I think they call it.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
I was sitting up in my chair and I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
here we
Here
go.
we- yeah,
and it was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
so we have a scale team, and those shots were so fun, and we really enjoyed that. Now, on to Numenor. And I was like, you know, like you don't actually get to see anything. And my main gripe with the behind the scenes is they spend a lot of time they interview the actors, and you know it's nice to see them behind the scenes and when they're not in character, but they just kind of talk about what's going on in the scene. They don't talk about their experience shooting the scene. And there was a few times where they did, like when Galadriel or Morfydd Clark talked about being dragged under
Water, yeah.
you got her experience there. But a lot of time, especially when they were interviewing Charlie Vickers, he was like, yeah, and this is when Sauron is, you know, or when, what is it, Halbrand is here.
He called him Hal.
Hal is like learning about, and he's like describing what happens in the episode. And I'm like, we know we've seen that.
Yeah, we didn't get too much more information on that. Like
Yeah.
the parts that I really think that I enjoyed the most were what you were just saying there of Morfydd Clark talking about like when we saw her being dragged under water. And also, I really liked watching Ismael Cruz Cordoba.
Oh yeah, stunts.
Doing his stunts and showing like saying like how, I can't remember what he said, something like every day, like how many hours they spent like training, and he was like, if you're not shooting this day, you're up and you're doing at least 2 different skill sets or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the kind of stuff that I wanted to see. This kind of seeing him getting up, training, seeing the sword play and the like skills, and like that was the same with Morfydd as well. We saw her training with the sword and saying how when she started out, her left hand, she was saying like that she's really bad left hand coordination, and so they started out like giving these, and she was like saying like names or something that you don't like. She was saying like I can't remember, it was like night and day or something, but it was like a technique referring to like the angles of the sword
Right,
or whatever.
okay, yeah, cool.
And I was like, oh, these are kind of just like cool little insights. I was like, I don't understand what that is, but I get you.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then she was saying as she progressed, she became better, and suddenly she realized that she was actually able to pull off the stunts and pull off the sword techniques with her left hand. So she was saying like that it was cool the way that they kind of like helped her along the process, and she saw her own development of that. Just little things like that. That's what you want to see, as opposed to, as you said,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
just the cast talking about what happens in the scene, because we're like, yeah, we saw the scene, we saw the series, we know what happened in that part, so that's not really that insightful.
Yeah. When they're there and they're being shot, just sitting in a chair, kind of talking about the scene. I don't really care for that. Like I like to see the actual behind the scenes. Like the best parts were Morfydd being dragged under. Probably when they're showing the whole like volcanic set. That was really cool as well, and all the Numenor sets as well. Just
The numerous sets were cool.
just because it gives you a sense of like, oh, they
But we
actually
didn't-
filmed this.
Yeah,
in
but
a
we didn't
real
get to
set.
see a huge scales of those sets either as well. There was certain parts, like there was a part where they were that scene that was shot with I can't remember the actor's name that plays Ar-Pharazôn.
Don't remember. Never remember him.
The Welsh guy.
Mm-hmm.
The scene where he was standing in front of that big wall and those big doors, and he's like saying, you know, the callus is on these hands, whatever. We saw that, like, you see that wall and that doorway, and it's shooting from down, and it looks huge. But like from what we saw, I was like, you could be like that Monty Python, like, it's only a model. Like, you know, we don't know, was that actually a building? You couldn't really see anything, and I was like, it'd be cool if they showed us like, look at how big this huge set is and whatever.
Kind of like when they did the Minas Tirith thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But like this is what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that this really is just a trailer for they release some big thing on each episode, because they didn't touch on anything at all. Like there's so many things that they didn't talk about. Like the very last episode, they kind of were like, and then there was the Mystics, and there was this, and I was like, oh yeah, the Mystics. We never got anything about that. They don't do any of the Force perspective stuff. We don't know what's going on.
Well, like you mentioned a moment ago that I remember that they said, okay, and then we had a scale team, and I was like, oh, let me prepare my notes to write down something here. And I remember that, do you remember we watched an episode of if you don't know, the Corridor Crew on YouTube, go check them guys out, because they're fantastic at breaking down generally like effects and
usually special effects,
but also they'll like just filming techniques. They're just really, really insightful on all those types of things, and we watch a lot of their videos. But they did one episode on the Rings of Power. I think they said that they were going to come back and do a more detailed one, but at the time they were talking mainly about the scene where we see the Stranger and Nori, and it's like one of their first meetings. I think it's maybe their second meeting after he kind of wakes up and she's given him the blanket, and he's kind of you know, he's kind of, she gives them the snails to eat for the very first time. And snails. And you see the angle, and it's like he's crouched down and he's like passing over back the snails or whatever and things like that. And so it's like, obviously the most difficult thing is where you have a human or a large person and a hobbit together, and especially not just that they're speaking to each other, but they're interacting and they're passing things to each other. And we saw that in like the Fellowship of the Ring when Gandalf walks into Bag End and he gives his staff to Bilbo and his hat. That's the most impressive thing, because all the rest of it is just like you can shoot that separately and like cut it together. But when they pass an item off, and they were saying, and they saw one shot of the two characters in the middle of the screen, and they were saying that there were 3 possible different techniques that could have been used. There could have been forced perspective.
There was definitely forced perspective when it showed the two of them in camera. Then it shows like behind the big guy when he's handing it, and they're like, that's just a big actor.
Yeah.
That's like a 7-foot man.
Yeah, you know that when it's shot over the shoulder of someone, you can see like the actress that plays Nori, you can see, okay, well, that's an actress and a different person. That's fine, that's easy. But when they're in that one shot together, they didn't know if it was forced perspective, or they were saying because his cloak was covering the leaves, they were saying maybe they've cut him and just planted him in. Now what we learned from watching the behind the scenes of this is that they did use forced perspective, because we saw it. They showed that being shot, and you could see them. They were standing at different angles. Now, if you don't know what forced perspective is, it's just basically Dave going closer to the camera, and if I stand like this looking at Dave, maybe now, I don't know how much of it's in it.
That definitely didn't work.
Making it look like one person's bigger, where it's just getting closer to the camera. That's all it is. So they did that with this, but they didn't even mention it. It was just while somebody else, some actor was speaking and giving a voiceover, we saw some background clips of what was happening. So I really thought that they were going to go into more detail, and that they didn't. I remember kind of going, oh, they did use forced perspective there. And there was no mention of it. And I was like, oh,
yeah, but I think it's a good thing, because they didn't really get into anything in any sort of detail. So I do think
maybe you're right. Maybe
this will be kind of like a trailer for something to come.
Hopefully, yeah.
Like when season 2 coming out, not for another at least year and a half minimum.
Sure.
So I think that they have plenty of time to put something together to make a whole appendices thing. 8 episodes. Each episode could be kind of like we've seen with Disney. We've got like
maybe when they release the
Mandalorian
DVD of season 1.
Maybe. Are DVDs a thing still?
Yeah, they probably won't even bother, because it's all you need to have.
It's all on Amazon
Prime.
Yeah.
Actually, never mind.
They probably won't even do that.
But they might do some sort of display set with discs, and then a special feature like kind of 4K Lord of the Rings that came out last year or 2 years ago. Yeah. There could be something like that.
Well, I definitely want to see a lot of the behind the scenes. That was something that I wanted to see from the get-go when I saw the very first episode. Not even just how they shot things, but just special effects, the art behind, the concept art, all that kind of stuff.
Before we even saw the first episode, we got loads of, still images coming out in magazines and things like that. And one of the biggest ones that we saw was behind the scenes shots of them shooting that water scene in the water tank, and like the big storm coming in. And we heard, before we even saw the episodes, we heard about Morphy Clark talking about how we got to shoot in this huge water tank with these crazy like waves, lightning effects. And so before we even saw the series, we were already hearing about behind the scenes stuff. So it's interesting that we didn't get loads more. And I think I must agree with you, thinking that this must be just sort of a teaser for what is to come. I hope so, at least.
I think it has to be. Like, you scared me there when you said this TikTok generation, and like maybe that's what it's for. But maybe. I think, come on, Amazon cash grabbers. I think, I think there's going to be more. There has to be more.
So you're right. Like with I mean, I haven't really thought about this before. I hadn't really processed it before. But maybe when I saw there's just 5-minute episodes, I was like, oh, is that all we're getting? And I was just like, oh, well, maybe that's just it. But
I do feel like they purposely they're teasing us.
Yeah, no, I really hope so, because there's so much there that that maybe even filmmakers would even enjoy more than the actual series themselves. Because I think that when you watch the behind the scenes, when you see the amount of work and the amount of detail and the amount of like whatever things that go into creating certain scenes, and bringing it from like the storyboard through the minds of different people and all onto the screen, and like the techniques, and like how can we make this a reality, this shot that I want to get this perfect thing, how can we go about it, all of the important like it's so many different teams coming together to create one shot. People see that and they kind of go, wow, that's so amazing, and then that'll even drive more interest in the show itself. Because I think we both said it, that after we watched that making of yesterday, I was kind of like, I want to go back and watch the series again now. And
Yeah.
like, you know, so
It always adds to it.
Yeah,
And like
it always
that
adds
was
to
the thing with the Lord of the Rings as well. You don't appreciate what goes in behind the scenes until you actually see the behind the scenes. And you're like, oh my god, that is an absolute monster shot. Like especially all the forced perspective stuffs with Gandalf and the hobbits in the Fellowship of the Ring. It's just like not possible. And the mind of Peter Jackson to think of all these techniques, especially when he was coming up with them at the time, like from scratch. Like now we get to see what kind of modern techniques and what kind of modern problems do they have to solve for the Rings of Power. But
and
also we haven't been given that yet.
Yeah. But like little things as well. I mean, one of the highlights of the Rings of Power series, I'm pretty sure everybody agrees, is the design of the orcs. And it was cool as well, showing them.
We got a glimpse behind that.
Again, like really small glimpses, but again, showing the initial sketches being done. And then it was all like, it wasn't even done sketch by hand. It was, sketched like on some sort of Procreate app or something like that. And then like bringing the colors in and then showing that in like real life and being like applied to the actors. And then like, that's just, now it's become a reality. Those little things like, here's the very first beginnings. Here's the first sketches. Then they've
and you like to hear the thought process as well that goes into it. Like we all know the orcs' design was, the bones and the helmets and stuff to cover them from sunlight. But like little things, I think when they were talking about the hobbits and the design, people were saying, well, we've used these colors and these colors because this is what they would have done. This is what they would have, and like these are the materials they would have used. And you're like, oh yeah, there's a lot of thought that goes in behind.
Yeah.
That they don't bring up in the show, and you might not get to hear, in general media. And behind the scenes, there's always so much that goes into it. Maybe the scales of the Numenorians.
Also,
we'll get to know why they chose that, and there's more
also
important reason.
Galadriel's company at the very beginning, when they're like, okay, they've been on the road searching for Sauron for 1,000 years,
right,
through all of these different things. So we want to make their outfits look like they originally were very like noble and regal and beautiful and like, very elegant, but over time. And also what was interesting was she said that maybe imagine an elf was wounded. Like imagine they were slashed or shot with an arrow, and over time they've just healed, but their clothes haven't.
Yeah,
and and there's still these tears and holes and rips, but they're fine. Like they're like, oh, I'm grand, I'm as good as new, but my clothes are tattered. And like we saw them spraying the like this kind of like snow and this kind of just some I don't know what it was, but they're spraying onto the boots, make it look like they were older and they were covered in snow and whatever. So I don't know. Just again, we got really like a little taste, and it definitely, if they came out and right now said that's just a teaser for what's to come, I'd be licking my lips.
Yeah, because remember we heard initially before this was going to drop, the day before it was coming out, and nobody else knew. There wasn't. We were told the day before that the trailer was about to drop from Amazon, and that was all the information we got. And then the trailer dropped. And then was it the next day?
It was like the next day, yeah.
The next day, all the episodes came out. So there's no build-up. And we know Amazon will want to do a build-up. So maybe this is the very first piece of marketing for this giant BTS.
If it is, these are like the longest teaser trailers for anything. Which is also...
Yeah, well...
I mean, Amazon are doing things differently, I suppose. So.
Yeah, I know. It's a new world. But yeah, like apart from that, guys, there's not much to discuss. Like I'm sure you've all gone and seen what you've seen, so I'd love to know if anyone else has any more thoughts, and if anyone has any inside thoughts, if there's going to be more behind the scenes, because they're going to have to do that. They had plenty of cameras around.
I mean, yeah, the amount of like the hours and hours of footage they must have collected, like I mean, yeah, like if you're thinking of Amazon as the business, they can't be just like just dump all that footage now, shot in the highest 4K, like 8K or whatever. And like,
they're definitely they're building a whole series of behind the scenes, I think.
Yeah, maybe they are. Yeah, I'm glad now that I've come here and listened to you talk about this, Dave, today, because initially I was like, oh, that was nice, but I wanted more. It left me kind of.
Yeah, no, I'm not satisfied at all. I'm not full and satisfied.
Fat and satisfied.
But
I wanted to kind of go through some of the other points.
Yeah, like I had some notes, but like
we've just been rambling, and we've kind of touched on some of the points. But I like written down notes of what stood out to me as I was watching all 8 episodes. We just watched 8 episodes back to back.
Yeah,
and so while we were going, I just wrote down a couple of things. And obviously, in the very very beginning, I already mentioned it, but the water tank sequence, that was really really cool as well. And again,
real.
I want to see more.
All real.
And we saw the shot of like where Galadriel and Halbrand are together on that little like
Raft.
makeshift raft. It gets struck by lightning, and she just tied herself to the mast, and that falls down, and she gets dragged down like she's unconscious. We saw the shooting of that, and it's that's the way it's shot. It's not, because I was like, oh, maybe she's like in water and the camera is just kind of going up like this to make it look like she's going down. No, she's like, the cameras are steady. It shows all the like guys underwater in their scuba gear with the cameras, and she's just actually getting tugged to the bottom with, basically what's it called, like free diving, where she has no oxygen mask or anything. So I was like, that must be really scary to do those kind of scenes.
I remember before the show came out, that was one of the first scenes that we got a glimpse behind before we even got trailers or anything. And when we got those interviews in the magazines, and we got more behind the scenes than those, to be honest. And I remember her specifically saying that she had to train and like learn how to, hold her breath for, I don't know, could be like
20 minutes,
like 2 or 3 minutes or something crazy like that.
Like Tom Cruise.
And I was wondering why she would have to do that, because if you're just on a raft, but yeah, that scene where she's being pulled under,
but the waves that they were, and like they said that like this tank, it was able to create these giant waves, and also it could create lightning effects and all this. Like, I mean,
scary stuff.
Yeah, now that I'm even saying it, I'm like, yeah, they're definitely just said that so that we'd be interested to go and see more, because like I definitely want to see more of like how they made those shots, because just from a like film creation and a like, I don't know, just movie making standpoint, it's really interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely. I want to see more.
I made a note on the accents of the people on set, because
I said it's lovely to hear a New Zealand accent again. Is that what you meant?
No, that was just something that I enjoyed.
Oh, I just like hearing like people that weren't actors, that were just like I don't know, costume design or something. They were like, it's very good. Yeah, and I was like, this brings me back.
It brings me back. You're like, they did go to Middle Earth.
Yeah.
No, I made the point more about the Harfoots, because I was like,
Markella.
Markella, she stayed in because I was like,
her accent's great. Like,
it's not bad. It's not
like even off camera, like
as in off camera when she was talking to the crew, she stayed in her Harfoot accent. I was like, that's kind of cool that she's really trying to get into it. And then it went to her mother. I can't remember that actress.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, it showed a scene of her from the series. We've already spoken about that before, that I thought that was the accent that I just didn't like. That was my least favorite accent of hers. And it showed a shot of her behind the scenes speaking to the crew, and she was using her normal speaking accent. I'm not sure, is she from Australia? Is she Australian?
Possibly.
I can't remember. Maybe she's British or Australian, I can't remember. But she was speaking with her normal accent, and then it cut directly to a shot of her in the series, and the contrast was just so jarring. I was like, oh my god, that's really, I don't like that at all. But it was weird when you see
unnatural as well.
Yeah, it was very unnatural. It doesn't sound like a real I don't know. It's definitely the one
out of
all the Harfoots. I thought hers was the one that was like, oh, that was.
It
the
feels
one that
more like a stage.
It
production.
took me out. Yeah, it took me out of the world for a little minute. But yeah. So I wrote that down. I wrote down the Digger Orc. That was cool. They called him the Digger.
Yeah,
Orc.
I like that, and that's another thing where they just said that like off without anything attached to it. He's like, oh, the Digger Orc, and I'm like, there's a whole thing now. Maybe they designed different types of orcs, and this is a Digger Orc. He's got longer fingernails, but like we didn't get any of that. We just had to think about.
Do you remember when Ishmael was crawling through the tunnel and he finds the fingernail that was like stuck in the roof of the tunnel?
Yeah.
That was so obviously maybe those ones have the longer nails.
Exactly. So they have different types of orcs, and we don't get to hear, like, you only get to hear that kind of stuff in the behind the scenes, and that would add so much to the experience of watching it. But again, we didn't get to see it. We just heard someone pass remark calling him a Digger Orc, and I was like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And they talked a little bit about like how
the shooting of that scene.
Yeah, but like how he's not used to breathing, and like he takes like quick and short breaths, and also that was cool that they said he's not used to like extending his like arms and limbs, so like he fights like this, and it adds so much context. So when
they were talking about the actor that played that he was a trained ballet dancer, and that he was able to kind of be really crouched, but then suddenly when he wants to swipe, he's got these really long limbs, and he can do that.
He could contort and like make his body all weird. And
and as you said, that like where he's used to breathing underground and there's loads of dust and fumes, so he's used to taking these like short, quick, like like almost panting like a dog, and that's the way he would breathe because of the dust.
We got so much cool information. We did, tiny little like
exactly.
2 or 3 sentences from, was it J.A. Bayona? I'm not sure who it was.
Maybe it was J.A. Bayona. The next thing that I'd written down were the stunt scenes with Ishmael and the
paid
wires and
homage to that too.
yeah, that was
Said it was really cool. He seemed to do a lot of his own
I just
stunts.
loved I think they said he did all of his own stunts.
Yeah.
And that's for me the part that I was like, it looks so fun to be an actor on the series, and it's just like you wake up and it's like, okay, you're not. This is a day off. You're not shooting, so you're
going to
up
learn
early.
how to do-
You're doing horse riding in the morning, and then you're doing. Do you remember he said that they did a lot of training on fighting, but or not even fight, but just movement and staying close to the ground. So it showed him like doing that. I don't know what that. It's almost like a kind of a yoga that's very fluid, and you're getting up and you're moving your legs through your arms, and it's just very kind of like staying as low to the ground as possible and moving, but
Low center of gravity.
yeah.
style.
And I was like, that's really cool. I was like, that seems like a great.
You come away with so many
timetable.
life lessons as well, like learning to horse ride, and then
It's
you
just
get
like going to camp when you're a kid.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
like,
exactly.
What's our activity for the day today?
Like, oh, now you have to.
Now
shoot
we're
for
going
this.
painting cups.
picking daffodils.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And archery practice. So that was good. And again, even just like the wire work, some of the wire scenes in the actual Rings of Power series were a little bit too obvious. Like, oh, that's a big just spinny wire thing. But then the one where he jumps with the axe and he breaks the beam, and they showed the beam collapse.
Yeah.
Where they had like it was set to like like an explosive or something where they click it and it like explodes and it collapses down on top of itself.
All
That was
practical, all on camera, all really cool.
Exactly, all practical. Yeah, so that was really cool.
Yeah, no, I loved all Ishmael's. See, I just love him now. And
He's cool, yeah.
He got.
He won.
He's
an
nominated
award.
for not an Emmy, is it?
No,
nominated for something.
I don't think it's an Emmy, but it's like best supporting actor or something like that. Or
Yeah, but like he's
One of those
he's one of the only actors I think to be nominated from the show, which is great. So
Which is pretty
congratulations to
well
him.
done. Good man,
Yeah,
Ishmael.
like all my notes
Enhorabuena.
we've kind of skimmed through anyway. So there's just one or two things that we both pointed out that Farazan's beard is real because you get to see him behind. the
No,
scenes.
but like we knew that anyway from the actor that he grew that beard, and it's just
I didn't realize he grew it that long though.
Oh yeah,
I thought it was like because we've seen him in person and it's like shorter, and
Hmm.
I've seen him talking, to like Variety and like other
No,
magazines.
just
that
because
he's had.
people that want to just hate everything about the show and they're like everything's crap, and I've just seen people
beard's
online
so
who saying
fake.
his beard's so fake, and I'm like, that's a real beard. That's what he looks like.
I want to see a lot more behind the scenes of is it episode 6, the actual battle episode where they have the.
Oh, that was another thing that I made a note of because it was so cool. It was really annoying because some of the shots that we saw in this weren't in the actual thing. Not that they were actual like finished shots, but where they got up obviously like so early in the morning when it was still dark, and they got the horses up on a big hill. When we saw the horses charge into that little town, it's already daytime, daybreak or whatever. And it's almost kind of cloudy. There's no sun really in that scene. It's just kind of a grey sky. But when we saw it, they were up on top of a hill before the sun had even risen, and we saw like the silhouette of all of the horses up on a hill
quite cool,
with just the sun kind of starting to break. I was like, that's a beautiful scene. Why didn't they shoot it then? I was like, it would have been incredible. Maybe that wasn't the idea, but the sun.
That was just them practicing for the
Yeah, they were
scene,
practicing
I
for the
suppose.
scene. They were just like getting in, and I was like, that would have been a great shot. But anyway,
Yeah, no,
mind.
there's so many good things about that battle that I would have loved to seen how they practically did things. Like they showed some not so great. Like they showed Bronwyn cutting the cart and the cart going down and actually exploding in camera, which is cool because again it's real.
Yeah.
But like I want to see all the other stuff. I want to see how they did the like protection of the barn and all that kind of stuff. And they kind of showed.
that was one thing that when we reviewed that episode, we had the Broken Sword lads on our channel, and we spoke about that, and we'd said like how Arondir had shot an arrow at a rope earlier to like bring down the tower.
Yeah.
And then why did someone need to be there to light the cart, because he could just shoot another lit arrow.
True, yeah.
That was like, we were like, oh yeah, but then it was like they had to light it, but then also they had to cut the rope. And I know you were saying he could just shoot another arrow. It's too risky to just be like shooting arrows all the time when you could just say, no, let's just put someone there to just cut it. So when I watched it again, I was like, oh no, it does make sense that Bronwyn would be there to cut the rope so that you could light it and you could cut it and send it down the hill.
Yeah, and I need to rewatch the whole series as well to answer for all the nitpicks that we had.
Just in
throughout.
case anyone was saying like, haha, I was like, yeah, that
Yeah,
was a nitpick
haha.
that we had, and I've since realized I don't know, yeah. I was like, yeah, oh no, that does make sense actually. And that happens as well, and it's important just to, when you say, oh, this is stupid, if you realize, oh, actually there was a reason to it, be like, oh, okay, fair enough.
I don't have any further notes.
Oh, I have a few more notes. So I'll just go through those. So
hey.
Galadriel's riding on the horse as well. We saw some of them riding scenes and them training with the horse as well. It was really cool to see them actually going up on and saying like, okay, we're on the horses. We're using one hand with a sword, and we're going to try to like learn to swipe. And then I know that it got a lot of slack when it first aired, but the episode where we saw Galadriel riding on the beach with Elendil, and that real close up, they want to say like, oh, we want to show Galadriel's joy at being back on a horse, because she hadn't been on a horse since the days in Valinor,
thousands of years ago.
And I was like, I always loved that shot. I thought it was so beautiful. The close up of her face was a little bit kind of like weird. It was a bit weird, but I didn't dislike it at any point. I remember watching that and being like, these scenes are stunning. They're gorgeous, and it was just nice to see that as well. And she spoke about that area as well, saying like the Black Sands, and saying how she said something like the days feel very short when you're shooting here, because it's just so beautiful.
She said like, when you're filming on location.
On location, yeah. But I was like, I'm so jealous. Like, loads of times I was like, oh, I wish that was me. I wish I was Galadriel.
I know, yeah. No. Those shots were brilliant, and I want to see way more. I want to see them finding the locations and like actually, picking and choosing which ones.
Scouting,
because you got to see that in the behind the scenes, the appendices in the Lord of the Rings. So
it was like going around their helicopter to be like, that looks good.
That looks like a nice hill.
Yeah, exactly. The hill where they're like, I could imagine building Edoras up there.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can go through the other ones quickly. The Guilds of Numenor, showing how important it was to have all the guilds, and okay, you're part of the Builders Guild, you're a blacksmith, you need to have the thing. That's always cool. And I loved all that because it all being voiced by Lloyd Owen.
Oh man. Hearing him in person as well, even though he wasn't in person, but you're not hearing any music or anything.
Thank God I was sitting down because I was weak at the knees.
Numenor.
The fast action scale. We spoke about the blacksmith training. Oh, and also that was another thing that we saw. Charlie Vickers was saying that behind the scenes on days when he wasn't shooting, he was actually learning to become like a blacksmith.
Yeah,
and he was like. They were showing it, and he was in there with like the goggles on. He was like hammering away. I was like, you learn so many skills coming out of this. You could be like, I'm going to become a blacksmith.
Yeah, you could retire. Like
loads
Sauron.
of training, so you learn loads. Yeah, so it's good. Also the I mentioned that. Also we spoke about it in our episode. The Dutch angle on that was all explained. Yeah. And looking at Adar, the character of Adar as well, I love that.
R.I.P.
But also one of the other biggest sets that we got to see was the smoky.
The volcanic one, yeah.
After the volcanic eruption, so the beginning of the last episode, I suppose.
Yeah. Was it the last episode?
No, the beginning of episode 7.
7, yeah. Yeah, because it's the end of 6 where the volcanic
erupts, yeah. So the beginning of episode 7 where it was shot in this enormous
it's like a warehouse, like.
Yeah. But just what you see on camera is like there's no color added in afterwards. It's all that color.
And I like that where they say we took inspiration from forest fires in California and Australia, and we tried to get that orange hue kind of color. And it looked great, and it's great to see the reasons why they chose those colors and that kind of shooting.
Yeah,
shot.
That kind of shot. Yeah. But one of the directors or someone that was working on it was saying like you get this really post-apocalyptic, and he was like, I mean apocalyptic.
Yeah.
He was like, because it's in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that was cool.
I was like, I wonder if he planned to say that before.
Yeah.
Correct himself.
Yeah, because I've never heard anyone say the word like apocalyptic. It's always post-apocalyptic, and I like the way he corrected himself. It's like, actually, no, this is happening now.
And then, of course, we get the whole forging of the rings, and they were talking about how we need to make that moment feel huge, and how you can't just show this ring is magic. So
I like
people
that.
need to kind of, from whatever was shot before and the build up, and
because they don't have any like special effects in that scene. It's just kind of the way it's shot.
They can't do something like where you put the ring on and there's this like surge of energy or something.
Yeah, no, you do. Yeah. You just feel like the rings are powerful, and it's not like the Infinity Stones, or like whenever they're sucked in. That's what you actually get to see a little bit of a. Like,
that's what I mean. Like, as when I was thinking about that, I was imagining like when Thanos puts in the Infinity Stone and he gets this like surge of energy. It's like
you can't
do that. Like, so it's the whole what had come before was what needed to be in order to make this moment feel huge.
And I feel like they felt very magical to me, and I like the way they're so glaringly different and individual and just like bright. And a lot of people, I remember posting a picture of that on Twitter and just saying like, oh wow, aren't these beautiful? And all the haters obviously came out and be like, these look like plastic crappy rings, and
Oh,
I was
they
like,
were deadly.
I just thought they were
Oh,
stunning.
they were
but
gorgeous, yeah.
And
But
then-
again, one of the decisions to make it feel huge, I suppose, was to make Galadriel's dagger such an important item for
yeah.
her the whole way through. It was this relic, and it was belonged to her brother, and she was holding on to that.
Yeah.
And that was all. And that was the thing that she went for before she dived off the boat that was going into Valinor, and then finally making it like, okay, you have to melt that down in order to create these rings. I think that added to it as well, that to make it even this bigger decision, and this now that gold and silver, it only lives in these rings now as well. So I don't know, I thought that was kind of cool.
yeah,
And again, that wasn't really from the behind the scenes that we saw, but that was
no, that well,
but that's when they said, how can we make this moment feel bigger? I was
yeah,
like,
it's
okay,
everything
that's
that
it.
went in before
Yeah.
as well.
I was
yeah.
like, well, they did accomplish that in some ways.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's probably enough. We've been rambling on. And
I
on.
mean, yeah, like we've probably talked for the same length of
Yeah,
behind
yeah,
the scenes. So
you
like,
could have not listened to us and just watched the whole thing.
yeah, no, but do watch it if you haven't, but let us know, is there any other little takes, and especially I want to know, does anyone know any information if there are going to be any more behind the scenes, because I'm pretty sure they'd have to be. Also,
Yeah.
they have begun production on season 2 as well, so if anyone, I'm sure everyone that listens to us also follows Fellowship of Fans, but they've posted up a couple of behind the scenes shots there already, so there are some photography of like some elves in the wood and blah blah blah, but yeah, it is wood elves. Yeah, we're finally getting the ball rolling on season 2, but yeah,
That is exciting.
that is exciting. Thank God we're getting it.
And also, they've said that apparently they have listened to the concerns and the negative comments of people on season 1, and they're going to be taking things into account, and they are trying to do their best.
And I think they don't have to do a lot of the stuff that like they had to build the world for season 1. Now season 2 they can focus a lot on the world that they've built, and like focus a lot more on the writing, on the actual like story itself, rather than like, now we have to come up with a design for wargs.
Because
orcs and-
maybe some of the world building got in the way of the story in season
Possibly.
1. I mean, it's still not an excuse if the story was very weak at parts, but I mean,
No, we'll talk about that in maybe a
but-
season 2 like warm up episode or something.
we'll see. But hopefully they'll really just be able to focus on the story writing, and yeah, as we said, like the amount of work that went into the world building was just so enormous, and it's like that. It's understandable that took a huge focus for season 1, and just for all the like preparation for season 1. But yeah, as we said, as we're coming to the end, I think we are wiser for it, having seen the behind the scenes, and I knew I was going to love it anyway because I enjoyed that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it definitely left me wanting more. And as we said, they kind of just told us, so we did some of this, we did some scale stuff. You're like, show us the scale stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
we
you
have
know,
a scale team. The end.
yeah. So yeah, definitely stuff that I wanted to see more of. So we'll see.
So yeah, that concludes what we're talking about, but the behind the scenes. But if you're left wanting more, we're gonna do a Mad Libs Lord of the Rings now. So enjoy yourselves, guys. And if you are listening, please check us out on YouTube and watch the episode there, because it's gonna be fun. Yeah. So, and yeah, by the way, we're wearing our elves t-shirts or jumpers.
I'm a wood elf.
I am a elf from Lindon.
Lindon elf. Very good.
We'll see you over there, guys.
See you in Mad Libs.